Today, we will be reviewing several types of 3D printer filament in order to see which is best for you. Before I start, several of these filaments were sponsored and sent to me, but that in no way affects my opinion. They didn't tell me to say anything. I will be using the Benchy, which is essentially a 3D printer torture test, which is aimed to test every part of the printer and filament. These are all the filaments that I have. I have 10 filaments here right now, and we'll get into all the specifications of them. Starting off with the Polymaker PolyMax Pla. It is aimed to be like the better than PLA Plus. It's Polymaker's own brand. This was actually the first sponsored filament that I've done, and I have a link for that video in the description down below. A couple years ago, I've kind of kept it as like a keepsake, you know. Yeah. In the same company, I have the PolyTerra Pla, also by Polymaker, and I've used it a bunch, as you can see. It is a definitely a reliable product, but we'll get into that later. Next, we have the Esun Pla Pro. This is definitely the filament that I have used the most over my 3D printing years. I just find it very reliable and definitely a good filament. But we'll get into all the specifics and why I think it's a good filament later. Next, we have the Overture Pla. I don't use Overture very often. I think I used it a long time ago and I didn't love it, but it was on sale a couple weeks ago. So I bought it then, and I have yet to use it. Next, we have the Overture Silk Pla. This one has given me so many challenges and hardships, even more than TPU and other materials that are said to be very annoying. This is much more annoying. I'll get into why later. Next, we have Overture Tpu. I'm using TPU instead of a PLA right now to test how it stacks up. I know, for those who don't know, TPU is a rubber bendable filament, but it requires a direct drive, which is like a lacquer Bowden tube, and the main extruder is like right above the hot end, which is you can purchase on like lower end printers like Ender 3s, Ender 3v2, all that. But usually the higher end printers do have direct drives, so you should be good. But I'll get into it later and show you all the examples. And lastly, we have the Overture Petg. A lot of variety coming from Overture here. They definitely have a lot to offer, which can mean that they're either good or dipping their feet in a lot of ponds just to, you know, if one works, they'll go with it, but not all great ones, especially with the Silk Pla. I'm using Petg because I've heard so much about it that it's better than PLA, you know, stronger, better, faster, but I'm just putting that to the test. Next, we have this 3-pack that I found on Amazon. It's the Mika3d metallic pack, I believe. And it comes with silver, gold, and bronze or copper colored. And I was scrolling through Amazon and I saw these, and it was like $30 for 3 filaments, and I was like, wow, this looks like a good deal. Can't be that good, so that's what we're gonna test. These are all the filaments. Now let's go to the benchies. Before I review all the benchies, I would first like to say that all of these benchies were printed on my Ender 3 Max, which I have that video unboxing before, if you want to check that out. They're all printed at 50 meters per second on a 210 degrees Celsius extruder with a 70 degree bed, aside from the Petg, which is 250 degrees Celsius extruder on a 90 degree bed. Sadly, when I went to do my time lapses for the benchies, the files were unfortunately corrupt, so I can't post them. Starting off with the Overture Pla Professional, we have this benchy right here. Trying to get the best view possible. We can see definitely the layer lines are very clearly almost absent, actually. They're very nice. They're definitely fine-tuned there. We have the overhang is a little bit messed up there. Top part looks good. The only issue that I actually see is like the lower lines here. Could be because it hasn't, like, you know, some filaments like take a while to start getting the layer lines good. You can see the leveling there, not the best. That's my fault. You can see a little bit on the curve here. But overall, this looks like a very nice benchy. Next up, we're gonna try out the Esun Pla Pro. This is my most used filament. We can definitely see why as we look into it. We can see a little bit of strain there, but you can see the layer lines almost gone completely. Like it doesn't even look 3D printed at some points, but other points you can definitely tell. You can tell with the back part here, all of the overhang and the parts where it moves fast, the extruder. It could be because of my printer, but all of these lines definitely are visible in the top parts because I believe it's moving faster, and therefore the printer and or filament doesn't have time to react or heat up as fast. But otherwise, I mean, that overhang looks beautiful. You can't, like, by laser printed with no supports, in case you didn't know, which means that that's just a 90-degree angle, just flat there. Top part looks good. You can definitely see there, but definitely a nice benchy compared to the Overture Pla Pro. They are almost identical. A little bit of issues with the Overture, but I could be a little biased here. They honestly seem almost identical. But you can see what I was talking about compared to the other printers, where the filament takes a while to get going there. When almost here, it's almost like started instantly. It's this benchy. Next up, we have the PolyTerra Pla. This was suggested by one of my friends, and it definitely has some pros and cons. You can see definitely here, the layer line is definitely visible, but near the tops and parts where it curves, they're hardly visible at all. But when you come to these parts over here, where it effectively starts getting stringing a little bit there, you can see stringing there. The overhang is a little bit choppy there, a little bit choppy there. Lines are much more visible here. I think it's the same problem with the Esun Pla in that sense. You can see in the back, the layer lines are also much more visible compared to the front, where they are hardly visible at all. You can also see the individual parts here based on this filament. That's the PolyTerra Pla. Next up, we have the PolyMax Pla. A lot of P's, alliteration, pretty good. You don't see right off the bat that it definitely has the bottom part that a lot of filaments are having, where it takes a while to get going. But once it does, you can definitely see right there, it looks amazing. It has the same thing with the PolyTerra, where this area right over here, perfect. I can barely see layer lines. I see more of the up layer than the down layer, which didn't happen because it doesn't exist. But that's where the praise kind of ends. You can definitely see with the overhang there that it definitely fails in that category. A little bit of string on the inside there. This overhang looks amazing. I think it's just the curved overhang that messes up a lot with these filaments. Same thing with this side. But aside from that, it looks really good, especially because it's designed and it's advertised as specifically being strong. And this is not a great test for strength, but I trust that I did my test in my other video if you want to look at that. But the strength is definitely there. And I think that's definitely worth it in that sense. If you want a really strong PLA, I would kind of go for this one. That or the Esun Pla Pro. I've had great experience with those in strength. This is the Overture Silk Pla, and you're wondering, where's the benchy? This is it. Unfortunately, I printed it several times, and each time it would just cut out about this way through, maybe a little higher, a little bit lower, and whenever I were to print it, there would be some sort of material, almost looked like a covering over the filament, that kept causing it to jam. I only got one successful print with it ever, and that's showing right now. But from what we do see, this flat part there on the bottom looks amazing. That's about where the phrase ends. You can see the bottom there looks awful. That part awful. Doesn't look good there. The fact that it keeps stopping, despite the printer, I've tried multiple printers, definitely makes this one of the worst filaments I've ever had. And yeah, we'll get on to the next ones, the Mika3d pack, to see if that's more of the style that you're looking for. Now we're looking at the Mika3d Gold color. It comes in 3 colors, but this is definitely the coolest in my opinion, just because of the goldness, especially because I didn't have the the Overture Silk Pla, since that was a big fail. I hope this one will be a better one. And it, to say the most, didn't 100% deliver. It printed a whole benchy. It didn't feel halfway through. It did start running the lines there, which you can definitely see very visibly. You can see on that part, it starts cutting out. That part cuts out too, about universal. Maybe have bad layers, or something of the sorts, but you can definitely see it has definitely some potential. And we can look at the other Mika3d products to see how they compare. This is the Mika3d copper / bronze color. You're probably also wondering why there's only half of it there. And the power went out when I was printing it, and the power recovery did not work for some reason, and therefore it did not print all the way. And when I tried to reprint it, it didn't work very well. So I decided to just pass up on it and leave this one. As you can see, broke it, but the layer lines look about the same. It's almost, let me pull this one up. It's almost the exact same layers where these fail as well. And you can see that definitely, which could be potentially with my printer as well, because the same layer, it's usually the printer problem and not the filament. But this is the only filament that this problem occurs on. Looking at these parts, it just looks awful there. The string is incredible. You can kind of see there, it looks like a spider web, and it's very frail, as I broke off 2 pieces before. You can only see the layers there. Definitely didn't stick very well to there. Let's hope the silver puts up any sort of competition. Looking at the silver Mika3d color, it looks better in many ways, right? You can see that these lines here look a lot better. It does still have the couple of the chipped checkered lines there, but when you get to this part, it starts compacting there. It starts looking bad. A lot of string in there. The overhang looks pretty good, but not amazing. And that's about where that ends. I'd say though, for the price of Next, we have the TPU or Overture Tpu benchy. This is probably one of the most fun to play with because I can just squish it, right? I can just bend it and all that, and it'll pop right back to normal. I know affecting the string and all that, but looking first and not at the front, the sides look amazing. You can barely tell that there's any sort of layer lines here. This is like what you want the rubber to look like. But the front, I'm not sure what happened. The time lapses failed, and these just don't look good. Obviously, they cut out. I'm not sure if it's some sort of warping, some sort of edge, like breakage here, where it comes to a fine point and it stops working. The back, see, it happens in the same part of the back as well. But there's a little bit of overhang issues on this side here. A lot of string in the middle. I've noticed a lot of string with TPU because of the retraction settings that you have to fix. I did the same settings as the PLA just to see how it would compare. I mean, you can see how good it looks aside from the obvious bad parts in the front and back. But aside from that, it looks pretty good. Lastly, we have the Overture Petg. This is probably one of the worst ones that I've gotten. I got this Petg as a test to see how it compared to Filament, or not Filament, PLA, and it grossly underperformed. The bottom part just broke off, right? It like stuck so out to the bed, which shouldn't really be a problem, but it was. You can see for the good parts, that the layer lines here are hardly visible. They are definitely visible if you look at it at all. That's where the compliments end. Awful string on the front, awful string in the middle, awful stringing here, everywhere stringing, everywhere. I'm assuming this is a known issue between Petg. I didn't really do a ton of research on Petg because I would rather use PLA. I've heard it's much stronger. I've heard it's slightly stronger. How about that? Which I don't think is worth it. It definitely has this awful glossy look, and you can definitely see the layer lines when it has this glossy look. That's just the color. The overhang does not look good either. There's so much stringing and overhang that I would just never recommend this filament. There's probably some fine-tuning settings you'd have to do, but with these, it doesn't look good.